Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it. This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
China is pushing back against the Trump administration's new sanctions campaign. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Monday threatened sanctions on countries that refuse to cut economic ties with Iran. China is one of Iran's biggest trading partners and the largest consumer of its oil. So this felt particularly targeted toward them, even though they weren't named. The country's foreign ministry spokesman said yesterday China will, quote, take all necessary measures to firmly safeguard its own rights and interests, adding that China-Iran cooperation, in their words, should not be disrupted or undermined, noting that it has conformed with international law.
The White House is facing intense pushback from farmers for a plan to temporarily scrap tariffs on more than 660 million pounds of ground beef imports. So the plan is to sell it for 25% below market prices. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation, in July, the nation's beef herd had fell to a record low, and that's causing beef prices in the U.S. to rise. While the Trump administration says this deal will reduce prices for Americans, ranchers say this will run them out of business.
Well, the Trump administration is reportedly getting ready for the largest mass visa revocation in U.S. history. Up to 200,000 are potentially on the chopping block.
I did not prepare a concession speech, I'll tell you. That was not in the cards.
He wasn't ready, but he did concede. South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman lost the Republican Senate primary to Senator Darlene Graham. She's running for her brother's seat. Senator Lindsey Graham died unexpectedly in July.
I continue to miss Lindsey every day, and there is still a big hole in my heart.
Republicans control the Senate, but it's up for grabs in November.
First time that I saw him was in a wrestling magazine. Then I watched him on TV, then I bought a ringside seat. His name was Starlight Starbright, the greatest in the land. He sprinkled stardust in my eyes, I was his biggest fan. He's got a headlock on my heart. It was a takedown from the start.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. We're here live, Real America's Voice. Today is August 26, 2026, Anno Domini. Huge news out of the State Department, and I wanted to get into this because it's breaking just before we went to air today. Obviously something that we've been talking about here on this program for quite some time. State Department has just sanctioned another international Antifa network. This network, they are called the Autistici Invenati Collective, and they are an Italy-based hacker cell that provides far-left extremists with encrypted communications, calls, web hosting services, all concealed from law enforcement, a central node in the far-left's war on our civilization. And Secretary Marco Rubio leading the charge here, saying that far-left terrorism poses a profound threat to the United States and the broader West. Today, the United States is sanctioning several transnational far-left terrorist networks, including the AI Collective that we just talked about. This collective's services are used by the most active and violent Antifa cells in the United States and around our world. There will be no refuge for violent extremists who wage war on our civilization and plot to undermine law and order, destroy critical infrastructure, assault political opponents, or conspire to conceal their crimes from authorities. We will use all the tools and authorities at our disposal to fight terrorism and protect our way of life from terrorist coercion. And they're digging through how, and this is key, by the way, because the Rose City Antifa, so the Rose City Antifa out of Portland, they were working with this very same collective out of Italy. And if you go back to last year when I spoke at the Antifa roundtable on far-left violence at the White House, and President Trump brought this up, he said, is this an international network? I said, yes, sir, Mr. President, is an international network, and they deserve international terrorist designation. And here's a perfect example of that. This Rose City Antifa was using a site from an Italian Antifa, the AI collective, to dox ICE agents, incite attacks against them, quote, at their homes, and organize terror attacks on Border Patrol helicopters, which, of course, led to federal indictments. In fact, they called it laser tag, and they were putting out the information about the helicopters where they could put them up with the green lasers that they were using to go after ICE. So, and of course, they were translating it into Italian, into Portuguese, into French, into Spanish, so many different things. Sabotage techniques, arson pages, studying vulnerabilities, map pages for infrastructure and extractive industries. So they've got, okay, I see what they're saying. They're talking about bridges, pipelines, the electric grid, U.S. military logistics centers, or, perhaps even campuses where conservative speakers would be going to speak, and layouts of those campuses. Gee, I wonder. This was a part of a violent campaign against Stop Cop City, which you remember was outside of Atlanta, Georgia, which we covered extensively here on this program with Tree Chop Antifa. Folks, the socialist revolution is on. The Trump administration is taking steps to fight it internationally. We commend them. We back this play. We absolutely back what's going on here, and we support it fully to the hilt. God bless those who stand on the side of civilization. May God have mercy on those who oppose it. We'll be right back here. Jack Posobiec with more coming up in a quick break. Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice.
Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here. Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. This is incredible news. This is great stuff. I'm so excited about this. I couldn't be happier. And we're going to dig into it more here on the program. Folks, there's hundreds of data. But before we do, here's what you need to understand, because this is very interesting, right? We just talked about how Secretary of State Marco Rubio is working to smash and disrupt this Antifa doxing site, an international Antifa doxing site. Well, you might think, what are you going to do about all the other sites that are doxing you out there? The data broker companies they've got your name, they got your family members' names, your addresses, your phone numbers, as well as everything else about you that's ever leaked online. You think Antifa might want to use that? You better believe it. So we're talking maiden names, old addresses, maiden names for women, by the way, email addresses, all of it, tax records, sitting right there. And unless you take it down, it's still up. So Antifa can find out where you live. They can find out where you used to live. They can find out when your deed changed hands. They can map out your entire life. That kind of research is not hard for Antifa to do. And this is exactly how they were going after ICE officers. And let me tell you something, they do not have good intentions. So if you don't want that out there, if you don't want someone jumping on your own Facebook because they figured out how to get into your account, your birthday, your bank security questions, all that, getting your login on the dark web, which we're just now talking about, there's actually something you can do it. And Patriot Protect is how. Patriot Protect will get your information removed from those data broker sites before anyone gets the chance to use it. This isn't something that you want to do after it's already been stolen and Antifa's got your all your docs out there. It's something you do in advance. So other services will just alert you once the information's already gone, but Patriot Protect will make sure that you're unsearchable in the first place. I use it myself. I've got multiple layers of this, and Patriot Protect is absolutely the best one. A phone scam can cost you thousands of dollars. And think about that for your parents, for your family members, folks who are getting older in your family. It's just a great way to head off all of this. So go to patriotprotect.com and use promo code POST so you get 15% off. The link will be out there when we put this out. You got to protect your own privacy. There's a real benefit to being harder to find online. You want to get that digital camouflage in your life and become unsearchable. All right, I want to bring on our guest now, Aaron McIntyre, host of the Aaron McIntyre Show. Aaron, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no, and this is great news. I mean, I'm glad to finally be able to say, hey, we're talking about something really positive right now. And I had heard, I'll just say that I was in a meeting last night where I heard that we were going to be getting some good news on a variety of fronts. As we get closer to the election, as we get into the fall, and I think this is a big part of it because I think they're just people who don't actually believe that there is this left-wing network out there that's running international doxing sites that we're now seeing that there was this investigation by the State Department that they were even doxing ICE agents, hosting it on an international server, and then they were using that information to provide to the far left Antifa groups, whether it be in Portland or other areas where they were swarming to, like they swarmed into Minneapolis back in January of this year, that they're using these international arms to be able to help their forces on the ground. This is an international insurgent network. They are terrorists of the same stripe that I fought when I was in the military. And yet, for some reason, the public and the mainstream media just refuses to actually acknowledge the situation.
Yeah, this is a huge deal, and this comes in the midst of a flurry of wins for the Trump administration. It's been a very impressive few weeks from them, and this one is incredibly important. As you say, Antifa is not some kind of joke. It's not just the funny guys down at the local college who are, putting on weird protests. This is a violent international communist movement meant to destroy Western civilization. They are not joking. They are not kidding around. This is not small ball. Yeah, they might look weird. They might say stupid stuff, but so has every communist, and they still manage to kill millions and millions and millions of people. So this needs to be taken seriously. The fact that Antifa has successfully gone after ICE agents, has tried to intimidate them. People say, oh, well, why are ICE agents wearing masks? Well, exactly this, because the left knows that their campaign of terror can intimidate people. I mean, we literally have Supreme Court justices who are complaining about the level of violent threats they are receiving, to the point where many suspect that Amy Coney Barrett has changed her votes on some critical issues due to the intimidation and the violence. So this is a huge issue, and it is absolutely critical that the Trump administration is taking it seriously. This is a big step forward, and I am very glad to see it.
Well, it's amazing too, because we're I'm working on the finishing touches of, so we're putting out an update to Unhumans, and we're calling it Socialist Revolution. And this is one of the big things that we talk about, is that the left, up to and including, by the way, Barack Obama himself, will do anything to prevent you from actually talking about left-wing violence. And we were going back to, we're coming up on the 1 year of, obviously, of Charlie's murder. And we talk about the fact that if you look at the left's response, the immediate response from the left was, and again, like up to and including Barack Obama himself, who I don't know what you could call him other than the de facto head of the Democrat Party, that even he refused to call out the left directly. And then they sent Jimmy Kimmel out on ABC and said that Charlie Kirk was murdered by someone who was MAGA. And I point out to everyone that this is not done as a coincidence. This is an operation. They will do anything they can to maintain control of the information environment so that they never have to admit that things like these massive left-wing networks do exist. I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but could you imagine if there was like a right-wing site that was doing something like this to law enforcement, federal law enforcement, and the reaction from everyone?
Oh, yeah, it would be absolutely the end of them, and we all know this. But as you say, the left has operated with this incredible double standard for a long time. Don't forget, of course, that the left has been violent for decades and decades, which I'm sure you yourself have documented very many times. The days of rage, the Weather Underground, the amount of bombings that we simply sweep under the rug, the fact that most of the civil rights movement was actually not super peaceful. There were plenty of riots, plenty of violent incidents. Ultimately, the left has had a continuous string of violent action that gets swept under the rug, that gets forgotten. The last couple decades, it's been race riots that have been put on in the name of BLM and other organizations. Criminals usually who have been hurt during police interactions suddenly get a giant violent riot held in their honor. So this is continuous thing that we'd expect from the left. And Antifa is simply the most organized version of this. It is no surprise that guys like Barack Obama will not call out the violence because the left relies on violence. It thinks it has the monopoly on political violence in the United States. And that's why it is so incredibly important for the Trump administration to send messages like this. When you have people literally taking shots at the president, killing Charlie Kirk, threatening these other Supreme Court justices, this is a direct assault on our way of life, direct assault on our civilization. If people do not think that our government officials can conduct themselves safely, if they can make their own decisions without being intimidated by violent forces, then things get really bad very quickly.
Oh, they extremely do. And this is why it's key, because even if, so there's kind of a two-pronged approach here. So, yes, we're going to do the fight on the information space, that we're going to get this information out. We're going to explain to people that these networks exist, that these networks are real, and we can obviously point to various and sundry real-world examples of this taking place, up to and including the actual violence. Thomas Matthew Crooks, Ryan Wesley Routh, Cole Thomas Allen, the three attempted assassins of President Trump, Tyler Robinson, who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, Luigi Maggioni, for whom there is a cause celeb, and we now know there's overlap between the Maggioni supporters and the Lindsay Clancy supporters, which of course comes to no surprise to anyone who's been tracking cultural Marxism in our country. So that's part one. Part two, though, and it always has to be done through legal means, is that whatever legal means possible to the State Department, to the Treasury Department, to the Department of Justice, to the FBI, they have to disrupt, smash, and destroy these networks the same way that they went after ISIS. And I love this, that, there's a website up there and they take the entire thing down. They just go after it. I would say Silk Road, but of course Silk Road, I would say they went a little bit too far. But that's kind of my point, is that we know what it looks like when the government wants to go after a group of people or wants to go after an individual. We saw COVID, we saw Jan 6, and that's the type of response that we need to see when it's justified for going after Antifa. 1 minute, Aaron McIntyre.
Yeah, I think that it's critical that we have this network targeted. This act doesn't just take down the website. It also makes it a serious offense to do business with these people. Anyone who interacts with them, any organization that shelters them, anyone who is letting them operate financially, digitally, any of these things can have sanctions, other kickbacks. So this is a wide swath of penalties that can be brought against anyone who interacts with this organization. I've been told that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I hope this is true, because it's a great step, but it's not enough. And if we continue to see more gains like this, I think you will really see Antifa under pressure, which is exactly what we need to see going into the midterms.
No, it's exactly right. And I've got commenters and folks that are watching live are actually sending in information that they've gleaned from these sites, talking about they were celebrating the shooting of the National Guardsman from Thanksgiving of last year. So, I mean, exactly the type of stuff you would expect from these demons. Right back, Jack Posobiec, Aaron McIntyre, Real America's Voice.
You talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, who's done a great job.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Folks, a lot of companies talk about American values, but for most of them, it's just talk. It's a slogan, marketing pitch, and when it matters, they're nowhere to be found. That's why Patriot Mobile is different. For more than 12 years, Patriot Mobile has stood with Americans who believe freedom is worth fighting for. They were built on a simple idea. If corporations are using commerce to shape the culture, Americans deserve a real conservative alternative. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. You get premium priority nationwide service on any of the 3 major U.S. networks, unlimited data pairings, international roaming, and 100% U.S.-based customer service. And Patriot Mobile gives you something most carriers can't: 2 separate networks on one phone. That means stronger coverage, more flexibility, and peace of mind when you need it most. But what really separates Patriot Mobile is their mission. Every year, Patriot Mobile contributes millions to organizations defending free speech, religious liberty, the sanctity of life, the Second Amendment, and America's future. They're not sitting on the sidelines, they're in the fight, standing up for the values that matter to you, your family, and this country. So if you're going to pay for wireless service anyway, why not support a company that already shares your values? Go to patriotmobile.com/POSO or give them a call, 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code POSO for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/POSO, promo code POSO. Give them a call, 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. Well, folks, we're going through this incredible new news out of the State Department, this targeting of the network, and a ton of information that we're now getting about the specifics on the websites, these doxing sites that were going up. And it truly is amazing. And Aaron McIntyre is our guest, and we detail all of this in the new book, Unhumans, Socialist Revolution, the new update to Unhumans. And Aaron, here's what's amazing to me is that the information environment, the average American out there, who just listens to NPR or kind of scrolls around on Facebook, they actually have a completely fried view, a fried mental model, if you will, of the entire world, where they believe that anything remember, this is what always happens. Anything the right does is represents a threat to democracy and is the destabilization of the entire system, whereas anything the left does immediately has to be thrown away as that was a lone wolf, that was not connected to anything, that was not involved. There's no rhetoric that was tied to any of this. And in fact, it's probably the right's fault anyway. It's really amazing.
Well, in a mass democratic environment, you really end up with rule by the media, rule by television, because there's just too much going on. People have no ability to experience everything that's happening in that kind of scaled up environment. And so the only thing they know is what they see on TV, what they see on social media, what they read in the paper. And so the media's control of this narrative makes sure that a lot of people don't understand the reality involved. It's designed to do exactly that. If you can control what people see, if you control what they understand, their perception, then ultimately you control their reality. We saw this during COVID, where people acted as if we had this massive world-churning pandemic, when ultimately we had basically a bad case of the flu. We understand the power of these outlets. These outlets understand their own power, and they know that they need a firm grasp on the popular imagination, because if people really understood what the left was up to, they really saw the violence, they really saw what the left is planning for them, they would be up in arms. And I think this is what the reaction of the left after Charlie Kirk really showed to a lot of people. There's a mask off moment where they saw that it wasn't just a few radicals, but it was often their neighbor. It was people that they knew who were celebrating the death of somebody who held political beliefs that they did. And so we need people to see this. We need people to understand the severity of the situation. It's so easy to get sidetracked, especially when bad actors will pull attention away from what the left is doing and blame it on other people. But the key to take away from here is that ultimately it is Antifa. It is a violent left. And we have to stay focused on that fact. We have to make sure that the public understands that fact, especially when we're going into elections.
Well, and ultimately it's kind of a way for those of us that are actually trying to understand the way the network works is essentially this. And I've said this at the time with Jimmy Kimmel, is that they will give you cover. They will give you cover if you go and do something like this. That if you go and commit a random act, quote unquote, random act of violence, right, the way the media says it, that you will be given cover. You will not be given, you will not be You may go to jail, right? You may go to jail. You may be responded to by law enforcement in the moment, like Thomas Matthew Crooks, but that you will be given cover by the regime. And this is how we can sort of understand, we can tease out that, in fact, this is the militant arm of the media and the militant arm of the left because of the way they talk about it, because of the way that I hate to say it, but it takes something like the murder of Charlie Kirk for them to even admit that there is any kind of violence against conservatives, because they will always give cover for it.
Well, yeah, and as you say, they don't even really admit that because they always blame it on another conservative. They always say that Trump was somehow, shot at by a conservative, or that Charlie Kirk was killed by a MAGA supporter.
I actually checked this earlier today. It lasted about 5 days.
Yeah, and so this is why guys like me and Benny Johnson pushed so hard to get Jimmy Kimmel pushed off the air, but even that only lasted 3 days. These people are shameless. Ultimately, they will not take responsibility for what they are doing. And we just saw recently, about like last week, Hassan Piker out there making fun of Charlie Kirk's death. He had met Charlie. He had shook his hand. He had debated him in person. And there he is continuing this. So I think it's critical for people to realize that this has not gone away. This issue has not faded. This is still a belief. This is still an animus that these people have. And they are going to continue to go after ICE agents. They're going to continue to go after Republican politicians. And they're going to continue to go after conservative activists, even average conservative voters. There is no end to this. These people have decided that they want the destruction of our way of life. This is politics at its most existential. And we have to understand this is not about debates for these people. It's not about exchange about ideas. It's not that they don't understand that like Marxism doesn't work or anything like that. They don't care. It's an excuse for them to do violence to the people they hate.
Yeah, it's a justification for the violence. Aaron McIntyre, where can people go to follow you?
I've got the Aaron McIntyre Show on Blaze TV. And of course, you can catch it on Rumble, Odyssey, on YouTube, and on your favorite podcast platform.
All right. God bless, man. Thank you so much. Give him a follow. Right back. Jack Posobiec with more Human Events Daily.
Communists on the faculty of one university is one communist too many. One communist among the American advisors at Yalta was one communist too many.
They should be commended because they did.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God! They
And
should be
your
commended. They
sexism
didn't
and
kill their children. She's a murderer. These women are cheering. These are man-hating women that are standing outside. This is what it's about. They think the husband did it. They're crazy. They've lost their mind.
Do you know why
they're waving for a murderer?
Do you know why the woman is in a wheelchair? Did you even notice that she's
couldn't care less. She's a murderer.
Because she jumped out the window after this
So
happened.
she should have. I'd have pushed her. They say that Lindsay was in psychosis. I think these women are suffering from psychosis. They've been watching too many true crime Netflix dramas. You know, this was a incredibly privileged woman, incredibly wealthy. She had a nanny, and she's still complaining that she needed help. She could not have got more help from the system that she already have received. This is a murderer who strangled her children one by one. One of the boys ran away, and she chased him down and killed him.
Laurie Watkins.
What you just said was absolutely disgusting.
Thank you.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you.
And you can hear that he's not. Okay?
Why? Because it's true.
You clearly don't care, so pipe down.
I don't care. And by the way, men watching this, if you have a woman sat next to you on the sofa who is defending this murderer, you got to think deeply about this. I've seen weddings
so
of
we
people
need to have some empathy with.
Talk to your women and find out what are they thinking. They're defending this woman. It's
I don't think anybody's defending what she did, but you can have empathy for what she went through and how she.
I know many women that this has happened to. No, they did not kill their children, but they also, what you failed to mention.
They should be commended because they did.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God! They
And
should be
your
commended. They
sexism
didn't
and
kill their children. She's a murderer. These women are cheering.
I'm done.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, we're back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Well, if you've been anywhere near the internet, you've probably seen that clip over the last 24 hours or so. And we, of course, have the incredible the incredible individual who stood up to this toxic feminist. He's British strategist Thomas Corbett Dillon, who joins us now. Thomas, how are you?
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
No, and I've got to ask, how are you mentally, emotionally? I want to make sure that your mental health is doing well after having to spend so much time in close proximity to that amount of toxicity.
Doing great. The men have been rallying around. It's good to see that everyone is. And also the women. You know, we have to remember that there's a lot of sensible women that are like, yeah, we don't relate to this crazy lady, so...
Well, that's exactly. I mean, my wife, who is here, sitting and watching the show, is one of them. Because
right.
There's a lot of good. I would just say normal, women out there that feel that they've been, I think, shouted out of the conversation. Now, I do want to also note, though, that there is your clip has gone absolutely viral. But I think that there's some breaking news regarding your Instagram account. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, they've suspended me. These women, they've all mass reported my account, I suppose, and I've been officially suspended from Instagram. It's great. What, because I'm not willing to defend a baby killer? They're saying that I've got to be suspended. So I guess the censorship is still well and truly alive. I thought we'd passed that era, but I guess we're still in it.
Well, what I'm so confused about is what, if at all, you said that was either wrong or offensive in that video. I mean, certainly you disagreed with the other commentator, but at the same time, everything you said was based in fact.
Right. I think they were upset that I sort of exposed the hypocrisy of these crazy feminists. And just, it was truly unprofessional. Like, we're in a work environment and she starts screaming at me like that. Can you imagine if I'd screamed at her like that, the amount of abuse and hate I'd get? And from both sides, men would equally and rightfully be saying, you shouldn't talk to someone like that. But these women are all like, yeah, stick it to him. They've lost their minds, as I said on the show.
No, I think that's exactly right, and certainly the censorship is obviously unjustified, and I hope that that Meta certainly will correct this, because it's obviously incorrect. You certainly didn't say anything offensive. You didn't attack anyone's on hate speech or any of these nebulous things. But of course, they didn't like the facts. They didn't like the facts about what you were saying and what you were putting out. And the fact of the matter remains that not only was this woman, again, Lindsay Clancy, this I don't even call her a mother because I actually think she's forfeited that title, that 3 times over, that she is someone who, number one, does not deserve the level of affection and support that she's receiving. But number two, for anyone who's actually watching the trial, it feels like her defense is crumbling.
Yeah, it is. And it's, and I genuinely was actually confused when this whole thing picked up. I was like, wait, sorry, am I talking about the wrong story? I'm like, are you defending who I think you're defending? That was when it got kind of confusing for me. And I was like, wait, and then of course she totally lost it because I just couldn't. And some people on Twitter have said, oh, well, I was talking over her and I didn't let her get a point across. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to let her she has no point. There is no point to make. We do not defend this woman in any way. She killed her 3 children. And, I had a discussion about this where some people say, well, yes, men do this sometimes. There's murder suicides that happen all the time. Right. But, let's look at the facts of those. It tends to be some guy, awful situation, takes a shotgun, kills 3 kids, and it's done, and kills himself, done. This is an evil woman who systematically strangled those kids one by one. 4 minutes it takes to strangle someone, one by one. One of the boys ran away and hid. She chased him down. This is an evil woman. There is no defense for this situation.
No, and this is where, I've come in and said, is there a question about the pharmacology and then the different medications she was on? And the way I look at it as well, yeah, maybe that's a question of whether or not she gets the death penalty. But otherwise, which I don't even know if it's on the books in Massachusetts, but otherwise, when it comes to culpability, yes, clearly she is culpable. There's no question that she is culpable for her extreme actions. And I've been watching this case the last few days because the prosecution's put on some very convincing psychiatrists as well as an FBI behavioral profiler who have both spent time with her, who studied her, who evaluated her, and came back saying that she is making up this story about the voices. They said that her story about the voices is not consistent with any other case that they have seen before where the voice only appeared during or appeared in her mind only during the killings and then vanished right after. They said that is not how these things work. They said it sounds like something that she was coached to say.
Right, yeah. And, my big concern, as you mentioned, Massachusetts up there, apparently the jury has quite a lot of ladies on it, and we can assume from the area in the state they're going to be quite liberal leaning. So this could be a bit of an outrageous situation. Let's see what happens when the jury comes. But this could just be the beginning of this story, because if you take a look at TikTok today, they're losing their minds. They really think there's theories that the husband pushed her out the window and that, the kids attacked her and all these. They've actually lost their minds. It's crazy. So we'll see what happens in this case.
No, I've seen that stuff as well. And honestly, I threw up a post on my X account where I said, I've gone too far down the Lindsay Clancy supporter rabbit hole. And that's what I call them, by the way. I call them supporters because they are in support of her. This isn't about, discussing the case. This isn't about, getting into the nitty gritty of the legal philosophies and criminal justice, and all of which I'm fine to, I think are fair play, but that's not what they're doing. They're looking for ways to justify her behavior. This is ex post facto justification for the killing of children, which we absolutely cannot condone. And there are some truly dark things that I have seen in there, to include some of the ones that you mentioned, where claiming that she committed these acts in self-defense, people reenacting things with Bratz dolls and TikTokers who have been hanging themselves out of windows trying to find ways that, and it's so horrible when you think of the fact that they won't even refer to these kids as being Patrick Clancy's children too, that they were his own children, and she did that to his children, and she did that to his family and destroyed everything that they held dear. And it's something that's so far beyond the pale and clearly the greatest nightmare for any husband, any father, no question. That's why it's affected me so much. And 1 minute until the break, but do you think that the tide is turning on the public sentiment here?
I do, and I saw that in the clip, because you just have to just stand your ground. She tried every technique. She gave the emotional one. She started accusing me of being misogynist and sexist, and then she started screaming at me. They did everything, but I wasn't giving her an inch, and that's what we've got to do. I'm looking at this footage of the women outside the courthouse. All these women have got men in their lives. These men need to say to them, this is not okay. You cannot be supporting this woman. The fathers, the brothers, their children, their sons, everyone, even the women in their lives, the sensible women need to be saying, the problem is they're all in their echo chamber full of liberal enclaves. But, we cannot allow them to think that that's an acceptable thing for them to be doing.
That's exactly right. Thomas, hold on 1 second. I'd love to hold you over the break. This is key, and I want to tease it out some more. One more segment, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice.
We're going to call this the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'm being honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, and we're on with British political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon. I would say you could follow him on Instagram, but you can't because his Instagram account is suspended, and hopefully we'll be able to work on that. You can, of course, follow him on X. But Thomas, right when you were leaving the last segment, we were finishing that up, you had said something about how the men, the fathers, the boys need to start voicing their concerns and standing up, and even the other women just need to start standing up to the feminists, and particularly these toxic feminists. What has happened that we've gotten so far gone in our society where women will get up there and feel that they can yell and scream and berate someone on national television for saying that I don't want women to kill their own children. How has it gotten to this point?
Right. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think the problem with it is that has been allowed to happen, and that has been. And, you know, I was thinking about this. If it had been sort of any other topic that she started screaming about, I probably would have held back, because I would have been like, oh, okay, like, it's a woman's issue. Like, they let the woman speak on the issues. I'd be like, I don't want to be the man trying to mansplain to her. But actually, I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to let you do this. There is no way I'm letting you defend this woman who killed her child. But I do think a lot of this seems to be coming down to this TikTok brain. They're in TikTok psychosis. They seem to have, you know, these women they've got their accounts and they've been posting whatever food videos and stuff and getting, you know, 10 views. And all of a sudden they say, well, I like this Lindsay Clancy woman, and they get 1 million views. And they're like, oh, you know, it's sort of a feedback loop. And all of a sudden they're doing more content. And then you see them hanging out the window and getting 1 million views. So it seems to be that it's encouraging this behavior. But this is the problem. If you've got a woman at home sitting there and you hear her listening to these TikToks, you got to start thinking, because it's a slippery slope once it gets in their mind. And then the algorithm starts feeding them more and more and more. She's going to be throwing ice in the bathtub any second now.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It's that incentivization, because it creates an incentive structure and it creates a permission structure where you commit this behavior. And so much of this is performative, right? They're not doing it when they're off camera. They're doing it when they're on camera. Right. So the behavior is being driven by the algorithm. It's being driven by the camera. It's being driven by the smartphone, by TikTok. And of course, this is what they want more of. So if this goes viral, they're going to promote it and they're going to extract more of the behavior from the individual. Men are certainly susceptible to this, but on this particular case, we know it's the gals that are the ones that are the highest offenders, and it's simply true. And so the idea being that you have to stand up and say no. Now we're showing this individual, Brittany Romano, who is a reporter, or should I say former reporter, who we on this program did our level best to make absolutely famous, because she was smiling, giggling, and winking at the camera in the Lindsay Clancy courtroom yesterday. And she was just causing a ruckus, acting completely unprofessionally, and it turned out that she was actually credentialed by Vanity Fair. And when I say was, that's because after our program, and this entire thing blew up, she blew up all over the internet, Vanity Fair came in and yanked her credentials, because they seemed to think, or she seemed to think, that it was perfectly okay to behave that way. And I would submit that it's exactly what you're saying, that she, in her social media echo chamber, totally believed that sort of behavior was fine. But then when it was exposed to the rest of the world, and people rightfully were horrified by the behavior, plus apparently she was childhood friends with Lindsay Clancy, and she was trying to play that up into some kind of career, she has now lost her credentials.
Yeah, good. And thanks to you guys for exposing that, because that needs to be said. But, you know, it's actually interesting. On the end of the clip that I posted from the debate, I actually didn't include it. I should have put it in, but I was actually worried, because what she says at the end, she calls out for all women, and she says, women, make sure you go and attack this guy and remind him what you think. Because as you said, in their echo chamber, she thought she got the clip. She was like, oh, I'm going to get 1 million views on this. I'm the one who's in the right, because she's in this bubble of people that have been encouraging this behavior. And actually what happened is, not only was it all the men were on my side, all the women were on my side. You know, she completely lost it. So it just shows you that they're in this echo chamber. But I do think, as we said, that, you know, men have got to, you know, stand up and do this. And as you said, it does happen to men. They get stuck in the algorithm and they do it, but they tend to, you know, go and spend all their time in the gym, and they actually tend to stop talking to women. That's the problem with the male problem of social media. They become these sort of incel characters. The women seem to be going and implying they're going to kill their children. I think it's totally different. So we've really got to focus right now on this female issue.
No, I think you're exactly right, because it is going to take men being resolute and men being forthright and simply saying, no, this behavior is unacceptable. The behavior of, and particularly in these cases, what you've done, this focus on Brittany Romano that we've done here, is the naming And public shaming plays a huge role here because there has to be some level of accountability. There has to be some level of a response to let them know you are in a social media echo chamber. And inside that echo chamber, sure, you and your buddies, my buddies and I have all sorts of group chats that I'm sure the SPLC and everyone else would love to find, but they never will. And and there's certain things that, I joke about with my friends. I was in the Navy, right? We told some salty jokes from time to time. But there's a difference between when you take that behavior and you put that behavior in public and you go so far as to be supportive of someone who is a child murderer. And if not this, then what would it take for men to finally stand up and say, absolutely not? And I think it's not just, and I love what you said, because it's not just a prerequisite for a good relationship, a prerequisite for good I say race relations, gender relations, of course, the male-female wars, but it's a prerequisite for civilization itself, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah, it is. And, happy marriage, that's what we want, right? But I think you touched onto an interesting point there. I forget when it was, but it's ancient times. But there was a town in Italy had a suicide epidemic. A girl killed herself and became sort of a martyr, and everyone loved her. And these women started seeing it and started copying her. They're copycats. And they were like, oh my God, I want all her attention. And it was going out of control. They were having 100 suicides a year until the mayor of the town actually hung up the woman who had killed herself and let her body rot in the street. And then the other women thought, oh, I don't really want that. That's not that's not what I was promised. So you have to expose and tell them that they are not going to be rewarded. They are not going to get the views and the clicks, and no one's going to cheer for them if they say these crazy things.
Well, and it's also that you will be remembered, right? You will be remembered and associated with shame, and you will be remembered and associated with disgrace. And this is a powerful tool, and it's something that Western to grow and scale and advance to achieve incredible things. And yet, for some reason, we've lost it along the way.
That's right. Look at these people. We've definitely lost it. I mean, the poor kids sitting there and thinking, hey, Mum, what did we do this weekend? Hey, we went to support a child killer. It's just, what are they thinking? I just don't get this at all. I saw they didn't go out in the rain. It's that classic sort of, remember Jordan Peterson started moving, he'd get all the leftists go to his rallies, so he moved them to 7 a.m. and none of them showed up. It's like this. They weren't there in the rain. They're not that committed. They just want to go for the clicks.
Exactly. If there's one modicum of discomfort, if there's one modicum of extra effort, then suddenly it all falls apart. No, incredible interview, incredible work, Thomas. Hope to have you on more. I understand you live in the U.S. now, and so of course much more accessible. So we'd love to get you on more for the time being.
Flee England, yes. Hellhole.
Yeah, no. I was just in London for CPAC UK, and I couldn't believe how far it's fallen. I really couldn't. And incredible country, wonderful history, but is in dire straits, just like many U.S. cities, by the way. Where can people go to follow you, at least until you get your Instagram back?
Just on X, so it's just T Corbett Dillon. That's me on there. We call it Londanistan now. We've given up the London title. It's now officially Londanistan.
All right. Well, I think that should be your next book, Thomas. I think that's your next book right there. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.